Hi, welcome to another episode of ARU Startup Podcast. My name is Omkar Singh, and today we are joined by Professor John Thompson. He is the visiting professor of entrepreneurship at Anglia Ruskin University. So, John, welcome on the Startup Podcast. And we begin with the first question. Who is John Thompson?
Well, as you just said, I'm a visiting professor in entrepreneurship here at Anglia Ruskin, but I'm also an emeritus professor at Huddersfield. Over the years, my teaching in entrepreneurship has focused on experiential entrepreneurship, and in the past, I've also started two business incubators. I've written a number of books on entrepreneurs, most of them actually with a colleague called Dr. Bill Bolton, who started the St John's Innovation Centre here in Cambridge. My own new book, due out early next year, has the title Entrepreneurs, Talent, Temperament, Opportunity and Mindset. And that really will tell you exactly where my real interests lie. I'm more interested in the person than the process, although understanding both is essential. And really, that's the purpose of this podcast, to get you thinking about what it means if someone describes you as an entrepreneurial person. And that can be in any walk of life, certainly not just business. How do you think? How do you naturally behave?
So, thank you so much for your introduction, John. And as we are now speaking about entrepreneurial mindset, so my next question is, what exactly do you mean by an entrepreneurial mind and an entrepreneurial mindset? And why do they matter?
Well, let me start by saying there are three key themes to entrepreneurship: opportunity, uncertainty, and resources. Opportunity, uncertainty, resources. Everything in life is uncertain to some degree. Some people are okay with this and enjoy the challenges that uncertainty brings. Other people, of course, prefer predictability. But when things are turbulent, there are always opportunities, mainly for those people who are willing to test themselves outside their comfort zone. Now, think about resources. Your first thought, especially if you're thinking about the business context, might be on financial resources, when actually there's an argument to make that the key resource is you, who you are, who you want to be, what you can do, what you enjoy doing, and critically, why you behave as you do. If you have an entrepreneurial mind, then you are someone who is habitually curious. You're interested in problems and in finding better answers for them. You look for and you see opportunities and possible answers to problems you've identified. Now, you're a student, and so there's a fair chance that you're perhaps thinking about the social and environmental sustainability implications of your ideas, and that's a good thing. Entrepreneurship is not just about making money, although you do always have to make enough money to recover your costs, whatever it is that you're doing. But then the next question is, having had ideas based on your curiosity, what do you do next? If you're minded to act, to take on the challenges, to take the inherent risks involved in the uncertainty, then you might be set to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Just think for a moment and imagine yourself living in a hamlet in a valley. Would you be happy there, where there is some degree of protection and safety? Or would you be wanting, maybe even anxious, to venture into the world outside the valley, a world that you can't see until you get there, always accepting that both the journey and the place you're going to find will carry surprises and risks? Of course, if you don't set off, you'll never know what you might find or what you could have missed out on. And staying where you are might actually turn out to the most risky alternative, as the world outside the hamlet and the valley keeps changing. So I might say that in today's world, fortune favours the brave, that there is never a guarantee that all things will work out for you. But you still have to make some serious choices, to stay vigilant, to try and learn all the time, and certainly to take some responsibility for the choices that you do make. Because when you graduate, you'll be faced with some more difficult decisions. You might well look for, set out to find, and even find a job that you really want to go on to and enjoy, and even turn it into a job for life. But at the same time, you might find that this doesn't happen, that it's not what you want, and that you end up creating your own job, being your own boss. So never forget the little throwaway phrase, if it is to be, it is up to me. If it is to be, it is up to me. See, I believe your time as a student is a great time to try and find out as much about yourself as you can. Who you are going to be at the end of your degree, compared with who you were at the beginning, is something that's going to really matter. And you can influence that with the choices that you make.
Thank you so much for answering that one. I think that was very well descriptive explanation on the entrepreneurial mind and mindset. Moving on to my next question. What do students need to be thinking about and doing? What skills are required to grow and enhance an entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, the first thing to understand about yourself is how naturally curious you are. Think about education. Do you really prefer to be taught things, especially those things you need to do to pass and to get a good degree? Or do you like to think outside the box, to challenge conventional wisdom, even if you find that sometimes you're becoming a bit of a lone voice? Would you want to call yourself creative? Are you an ideas person? But more than that, are your creative thoughts focused on things that matter to you, or on problems that you know other people have, problems that you might be able to help them with? Remember, you can be very creative and inventive, but if others don't see your ideas as being relevant for them in any way and for their problems, you're not going to build an enthusiastic following. Lots of new product ideas that are really creative, really different, never sell. And yet some simple ideas take off and do very well. And that's because they solve people's problems. So my thoughts on what you should be doing now. Well, entrepreneurial people like to have some control over their own destiny, and they will accept responsibility for their choices and actions. To enable this to happen, you need credibility. You have to be taken seriously. And essentially, this means you have agency. Students need to come across as people who seem to know what they're doing. They've had relevant experiences, but particularly they've learned from these experiences. They can talk about them. They seem to be making sense of the world. And in turn, this means they've not shunned fresh opportunities and they've pushed the boundaries of their comfort zone. They've built their self-confidence and their self-belief. To enable this to happen, you first need to be clear about the things you want to do and to achieve, and to understand why, of course. Then, if you do that, you will seek to identify the knowledge that you know you will need. And when this is knowledge you don't already have, you have to work out who has that knowledge and how best you can learn it from them with their help and support. And remember, we don't all learn the same way. Some of us do enjoy reading books. Others prefer watching YouTube videos. Some of us are naturally good listeners and will absorb information which they store away. Other people wait and ask specific questions when they need to know something, an instant answer to a question. People like me experienced an education system where we were taught stuff. We were provided with the information we needed to pass exams. Those of us with really good memories tended to be the high achievers, especially where we responded to the sort of command and control approach preferred by many teachers. But young people today, I believe, think very differently and behave differently. They're more driven towards finding about things that interest them. They want to have more choices and more control than we were ever allowed. And that's good. Because what I'm saying really is that, in other words, they're more instinctively entrepreneurial than we were ever allowed to be. And that is a great opportunity. But as well as knowledge, the second thing you need to do, of course, is develop particular skills and capabilities. And here it's partly a question of knowing and identifying what you are naturally good at. Where do your talents lie? What can you do really well? Let's say I said to you, everyone can do something better than 10,000 other people. Everyone can do something better than 10,000 other people. Now think whether you can discern what that one thing is in your case. But then that needs to be put in the context of what you want to be able to do well. And to make my point here, I'm going to ask you to just put aside what you might call career choices and think, just what really are you passionate about? Where would you really like to excel? What are your dreams? Would you like to sing at the front of a band at Glastonbury? Would you like to be playing Premiership football? Would you like to be on television, maybe a star in a reality TV programme? Now ask yourself, would you be satisfied playing in a band that gets regular local bookings but never makes the big time? Would you be happy playing football every week in a decent amateur team? Would you be happy being a freelance local news reporter who's subcontracted to follow up certain stories, occasionally getting a slot on TV? Or possibly a self-employed influencer, but again, not someone who makes the big time. Balancing capability and ambition really matters, and this is your personal challenge. To find something you really enjoy doing and performing at a level that doesn't leave you feeling disappointed or an underachiever.
Thank you. Thank you for answering about the skills and required to grow and enhance the entrepreneurial mindset. And as usual, I'd say that as equal to the previous answer, this was also very insightful and descriptive. What are your thoughts on students being opportunity driven?
Well, opportunities are out there everywhere, waiting to be found. But they are waiting to be found. They're not generally going to come looking for you. You have to look for them, but they are waiting. Now, do you look around and feel disappointed with what's on offer to you? Do you see something and think how you could do it better? But more than that, do you then feel that you should engage and try out your ideas somewhere? Or are you the sort of person that sees things but don't follow up and then perhaps end up regretting your inactions? See, relationships are an interesting case in point, and I'm picking my words carefully here. You might come across someone you're attracted to. You either do something about it or you don't. If you don't, if you hold back, if you prevaricate, and then see someone else intervene and act and succeed, think how you feel. Of course, you might be lucky, because luck often does play a part. Maybe that person you fancy will approach you and ask you because they see you as a decent prospect. But then they're the opportunity taker that you aren't. So opportunities need to be sought, they need to be spotted, they need to be identified, and they need to be seized. Some people see lots of opportunities and don't act. Some see very few opportunities, but do act on the ones they spot. There are all sorts of permutations. And as I say, luck does play a part. But you can, of course, always try and put yourself in a position where you can be lucky. As they say, you might go to the dance and spend all night dancing, but if you don't go to the dance, you certainly won't end up dancing. And remember, it could just turn out to be your lucky night. And I use that throwaway because some lines in a song that won a Grammy Award for the best country song quite a few years ago capture the idea of entrepreneurship perfectly. I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance. Never settle for the path of least resistance. Promise me that you'll give faith a fighting chance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. But luck's a bit capricious, you know. Most people, for example, think they have a 50-50 chance every time a coin gets tossed. And they're right. But they can't expect to win every alternate times or 5 times out of every 10 because it doesn't work like that. In a lot of cases, such as sport, it might not really matter, of course. The coin toss is just about choosing who plays from which end first. But there are times in, say, cricket, where the weather conditions dictate whether batting or bowling first is critical. It's a game changer. Those are the tosses you want to win, need to win. You can afford to lose 9 tosses out of 10 as long as you win the one that does matter.
Do students need to be good at focusing on something and really working at it?
Well, this relates to the debate about nature or nurture. Are entrepreneurs born or made? Yeah, I think the answer is both, and let me explain why. Great golfers, great musicians, great writers practice, practice, practice. They enjoy it. They get better and better, but they're building on some natural talent or ability. If you don't have that instinctive ability, however much you practice, the chances are you'll never become great. You'll never become outstanding. Certainly you'll improve, but will you put your heart and soul into something and end up disappointing because at the end you are still only average? Might be a very good average, but it's not outstanding. Now, of course, if you have the ability and don't practice, you'll never become as good as you potentially could be. So life is a balancing act between talent, interest, and ambition. Talent, interest, ambition. But in the end, it should be about your enjoyment and your satisfaction. So ideally, it helps if you can find out what you're good at and what you also enjoy doing, and then working at that. When you choose to focus on the things you are most passionate about, always be realistic, though, about your potential level of achievement. Sounds easy, but it isn't. And there's a real tension if you're naturally good at something and other people, possibly your parents, are really encouraging you to push yourself and go for it. And yet it's not something that you can get truly passionate about. You'd prefer to be doing something else. And when you choose to do that something else, other people accuse you of wasting your talents.
Thank you so much. And I've got a last question for you. Should students be taking risks?
Well, entrepreneurial people accept there are risks wherever there is uncertainty, but they embrace something of the who dares wins mentality and approach. And yet none of that should imply taking stupid risks, or at least ones that haven't been thought through. But don't forget that different people have different perceptions of risk, based in part on their understanding of a situation, but also on their natural ability. Some fast drivers are safer than other slower drivers because simply they're better drivers and they're in control when others wouldn't be. A great deal depends on whether you feel you have the ability and the will to deal with a situation when things go wrong, and things do go wrong. As the poet Robert Burns said, the best laid plans of mice and men gang after gley. Entrepreneurs, of course, typically tend to learn from things going wrong, and they have a determination to keep going, to persist, but to learn and improve. That said, others who might want to call themselves entrepreneurs persist when logic dictates a change of plan. After all, if you're playing sport and you have a game plan and it's not working, don't you adjust and try something differently? Hopefully you do. You don't just give up. You watch Dragon's Den. How often have you heard a dragon ask someone how much they've invested in an idea that isn't delivering what they were hoping for, and then tell them not to invest any more, but to rethink, to reevaluate? Put simply, you have to take risks in life, but you should look for measured risks where you can afford to lose what you've committed, be it money, be it time, or your personal reputation. Nobody gets it right every time. And whether you've realised it or not, your time as a student is a time when you have some real opportunities to push yourself, to push the boundaries of your comfort zone, because people want you to learn, to develop yourself. They will provide some fallbacks and they will provide support and mentoring. Where that might involve a business opportunity, just be careful of borrowing money though. Test your entrepreneurial prowess with something that requires you to create something. Try and sell it and find real customers. And your parents and your grandparents and your very best friends are not real customers here. See if you can persuade others to share your belief in something, and see how you react when the going gets a bit tough. Learn more about who you are. And finally, let me suggest that you take some risks by trying to open some new doors. Look for people you want to get to know and who might be able to help you now and also later on. Identify those people who you believe can help you on your journey. In many respects, developing your network of who you know and how they can help you is just as important as learning more stuff. If you're really clever about this, then you'll keep a diary of all the entrepreneurial things you choose to do, focusing what you think you've learned from your various choices and experiences.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions I've got on the entrepreneurial mindset. I think what I have seen is it's very insightful. It's very descriptive to the questions, and I'm sure our listeners will be able to make most of it in understanding the mindset and the skills, and our students will be able to use this as a resource going forward. So thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We really had a privilege hosting you on campus today. Thank you so much for having.
Been my pleasure. Thank
Thank
you.
you.